Hello everyone, hope you are all right. In our previous session, we learned the covalent bond, that is, bonding in carbon. Let us see what is allotropy. Allotropy is the property of some chemical elements to exist in one or more different forms. Here also, we'll learn the allotropy of carbon, which means carbon exists in more than one different forms, and these different forms are called allotropes. The property of being existed in different forms is called allotropy, and the different forms are said as allotropes. So we have different forms of carbon as fullerene, diamond, and graphite. We all know that the diamond is the hardest substance in the nature. We also have learnt about graphite in chapter 3. Fullerene is the form of carbon as C60. It is also called as Buckminster fullerene. So, you will remember the definition of allotropy, that is, the property of some chemical elements to exist in different forms. And you will remember the allotropes of carbon, which are diamond, graphite, and fullerene. Let us now talk about versatile nature of carbon. We have already learned that the formation of covalent bonds is sharing of electrons in different elements and compounds. We have also learned simple carbon compounds like methane. In our previous session, we learned that in methane how carbon and hydrogen share electrons. In the beginning of the chapter, we saw how many things we use contain carbon. In fact, we ourselves are made up of carbon compounds, which means our body also contains carbon. The numbers of carbon compounds whose formulas are known to chemists was recently estimated to be in millions, which means there are millions of carbon compounds and their formulas. Why is these properties seen only in carbon and not in other element? For that, we have two reasons, two cases. Let us learn it. Carbon has the unique ability to form bonds with other atoms of carbon, giving rise to large molecules. And this property is called catenation. So here in this image we can see there are long chains of carbon compounds. So how did it arise? Carbon has the unique ability to form bonds with other atoms of carbon, and which leads to large molecules. And this property of carbon to form bonds with other atoms of carbon is called catenation. Please remember the definition. What it is? The carbon has unique ability to form bonds with other atoms of carbon, which leads to large molecules. This property is called catenation. These compounds can have long chains of carbon, branched chains of carbon, or else we can see that they are arranged in rings. So in the first figure A, we can see long chains of carbon compound. In second one, we can see they are branched like structure they have, right? In the first figure, they have long chain like structure. In second one, they have branched structure, and in third one, they have ring kind of structure somewhat similar to circle, ring, right? So we can say that these compounds can have long chains of carbon, even branched chains. Also, they can have rings. So here also we can see it clearly. A straight chain, then branched chain and closed chain. Straight chain, that will be similar chain kind of structure. Branched, that will be having branch like structure, and closed, which we say ring structure. Okay, here these carbon atoms may be linked by single bond or double bond or triple bond also. So it is not necessary that carbon atoms will be linked by only single bond. And in our previous session, we have already learned what is single bond. Okay, when the atoms share one electron, then they have single covalent bond. Do you remember? We have learned that when the atoms share two electrons, then they have double bond. When the atoms share three electrons, then they have triple bonds. So here, compounds of carbon may have single, double or triple bond. So the compounds of carbon which are linked by only a single bond between them are said as saturated compounds. You need to remember the definition. The compounds of carbon which are linked by a single bond between the carbon atoms are called saturated compounds. Single bond, which means they will be sharing only one electron. On the other hand, we have unsaturated compounds. What are they? The compounds of carbon which are linked by at least one double or triple bonds between them are said as unsaturated compounds. Here you need to remember that it is not necessary that all bonds will be double bond or triple bond, at least one. It may happen that the compound has other single bond and one double bond. It is possible. So you need to remember that in unsaturated compounds, it is not necessary that all bonds will be double or triple bond. Okay, remember the words, at least one double or one triple bond. Okay, so they are said as unsaturated compounds. They will be sharing 2 electrons in double bond and 3 electrons in triple bond. No other element has this property of catenation which is seen in carbon, which means to form long chains or branched chains or rings. The carbon-carbon bond is very strong bond and hence it is very stable. Please remember this. The carbon-carbon bond is very strong and because of its strongness, it is very stable. And this gives the large number of carbon compounds with many carbon atoms linked with each other. We all know that carbon has 4 valence electrons, which means carbon has valency of 4. That is why it is capable of bonding with other 4 atoms of carbon or atoms of some other elements, okay, to share 4 electrons and to make bonds. Compounds of carbon are not necessary that they have only carbon as one of the element. It can be the compounds of carbon with oxygen carbon with hydrogen, carbon with nitrogen, carbon with sulfur, carbon with chlorine, and many other elements, which gives to compounds with specific properties and which depend on the elements other than carbon present in the molecule. Which means in carbon compounds, we will not have only carbon, we will have oxygen and other elements also. Again, I would say that the bonds which carbon forms with most other elements are very strong. Okay, remember this. The bonds which carbon make are very strong. And that is why these compounds are exceptionally stable. Why the compounds of carbon are stable? Because carbon forms the bond very strong. And what is the reason that carbon forms these strong bonds? Because of the small size of carbon. Okay, one of the reason for the formation of strong bonds by carbon is its small size, and this enables the nucleus to hold on to the shared pair of electrons strongly. As carbon has very small size, the nucleus will hold strongly the shared pair of electrons. Okay, small size of carbon, what does that mean? We have 6 total electrons, from which 4 are valence electron, and that is why that 4 electrons will be shared. As a result, there will be small size of carbon atom. Okay, because in the first orbit 2 electrons it has, and that is why the nucleus will be very strong to hold the shared pair of electrons, and that is why the bonds which carbon make are very strong, and hence the compounds which are made will be stable. On the other hand, the bonds which are formed by elements having bigger atoms will be weaker bonds.